Hello and welcome into Running for Coverage as we come to the end of 2023 and look forward to 2024. Want to welcome you in. Thanks for spending some of your holiday time with us. I'm Cole Pepper. Coming up, we will turn the tables on things just a bit. This episode, I will be the interviewee and Kelsey Pontius will be the interviewer. Kelsey, as you may know, is a great runner and also a registered sports dietitian. And her company, Meteor Nutrition, does some great work for runners and athletes in our area. And you've probably heard her on this podcast if you've listened for any length of time. Kelsey will also be running in the U.S. Olympic Marathon trials in February. And after running my first half marathon in the Thanksgiving Distance Classic, Kelsey messaged me and said, "Hey, I've got an idea. Let's do something a little different." And she said she wanted to interview me about my running and my training and running in that event. To be honest, at first I was a little bit hesitant because one of the reasons why I started this podcast and called it Running for Coverage is because I wanted to put the spotlight on runners in our community who sacrifice so much, who put so much into running, who create a great community, who accomplish great things, or who just strive to accomplish great things. And they don't get the kind of coverage that other athletes typically do, football players, baseball players, golfers, what have you. So I didn't want to make this podcast about me. I wanted to make it about the runners in our community. So I was a little hesitant, but thought about it. Thought, all right, well, maybe this will be fun. It's only a one-off, so don't want to make it too much of a me project. And Kelsey admitted that she always wanted to be a podcast host, the glamorous life that it is. So trusting her, we did it and had a great time doing so. Hopefully you'll enjoy the conversation coming up. Also want to remind everybody, if you haven't already, to sign up for our free newsletter. You can go to runningforcoverage.com and sign up there. You can also find links on our social media. We're on Facebook and we are on Instagram. And the benefits of the newsletter, we cover some of the local races there, as well as an opportunity for you to save on entries on some races, including right now for the Donna Marathon. If you haven't already signed up, there is a discount code associated there. We also have an opportunity for you to save on your gas purchases. So I've using a program that I've used for about 4 years now, saved like $300 on gas. So a great way for you to do that if you sign up for our free newsletter that comes out at least as often or more often than the podcast does. So just go to runningforcoverage.com and sign up there for the newsletter. All right, without further ado, we will move our way to the tables being turned on this episode of Running for Coverage.
Yes, Cole, welcome to the show. So nice to have you.
It's my favorite running podcast. Thank you so much.
5 stars, 5 stars. No, I'm so excited you agreed to do this. And I think that following your journey was so fun. It deserves to be highlighted. And I think that this is why we love running, that it's so easy to relate to people. Because we're all out there trying to get to the finish line the best way possible. And so I'm thrilled about your half marathon, and I selfishly want to hear more about it. And I couldn't rely on us running into each other at Fishwear. I needed this information and I need to know when I was going to have this information. So I'm actually doing this for me.
Well, I'm also willing to talk about it at Fishwear over some cold beer or any other local establishment that supports running.
Okay, great. So we'll get the highlight reel today, and then you can tell me all of the behind the scenes things at Fishwear of what really happened on Scott Mill.
Well, I will say this was a this is sort of a long time in coming, this race. As I've talked about on this podcast, I will talk running with anybody, and anybody who will even act like they're partly interested, I'll keep going. But I feel like when you have a new distance or a new setting or a new approach or it's something that you haven't done before, it just starts banging around in your head for all that time as you're preparing and leading up to it. And of course, again, selfishly, I use this podcast a little bit selfishly to try to gather more information from people like you and Keith and others who I've had on here to talk about mental approach and strategy and training and recovery and nutrition and all these things. So this was like a team effort. I feel like to get me to the finish line of my first half marathon.
Of course. Well, I'm really excited. Why don't we start from the beginning, the very beginning? What was it that made you say, you can choose a lot of different distances. What made you choose a half marathon and specifically a turkey trot?
I didn't really choose it, to be fair here. Two things had gone on. So um, back several years ago, my wife and I ran together a lot, and Jamie's run a lot of half marathons, and she goes, "Hey, well, maybe we can run a half marathon someday." And I was running 5Ks back then, and maybe the odd 5 miler or 9K or something. And I said, "Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever do that kind of distance." Well, time goes by, and um, I had, for whatever reason, spent, oh, I don't know, before I started the podcast, I spent maybe 6 or 8 months where I just really wasn't running that much. My schedule was very busy. At the time I was working at Channel 4, and I've got a daughter who's very active, stepson. So, you know, busy work life, busy family life, and so I just had not been getting out and running much before that. And so sometime, I think it was either March or April, something like that, might have been spring breakish time. I got a text from a friend of ours who used to run with all the time in a running group, who has since moved out to Seattle. And she sent me some pictures of some of the half marathons and that she had been running. And she said, "Here's my schedule for the rest of the year." And in November it said Thanksgiving half marathon with Cole, and I'm like, I haven't agreed to this. This is not what I'm doing. So uh, I still was like, no, I'm not. That distance is more than I'm ready for. I think I'm not going to do it. Then the next day, the very next day, my Garmin watch told me that I had the VO2 max of like a 73-year-old or something like that, and I was like, and I don't even know if it was right. It might have been at that point because I hadn't run much lately. I'm like, well, what am I doing here? So I was like, well, I guess that's a hint that I've got to get things going. And I think I had just decided to leave the TV station, which was going to change my availability, my schedule, and things like that. It was going to give me a little bit more time to spend with the family, but also more time to do other things. And I thought, all right. So I sort of half prepared for about 2 or 3 miles. I sent a note to Keith Brantley. I said, "Hey, do I have enough time to prepare for a half marathon in what was, I don't know, 5 or 6 months off by then?" He's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely do that. That's plenty of time." And he said, "Just start by going out and running, 3 miles 3 times a week and keeping your heart rate under, you know, basically in zone three kind of thing." And I thought, okay, I can do that. And so that was where it started. And then when I got out and started running those training runs, I realized how slow I had to go to keep my heart rate down that low. And you and I have talked about this. My family, all my dad did, my brothers do. We all tend to run a little hot in terms of heart rate, and have a high capacity, which part of that's good. Part of that means that your Garmin data needs to be adjusted a little bit. But that was the start of it. And then about 3 months ago, before the race, I really started to get serious on the long runs. Started to build them up from like 5, 6 miles up to 11, and then there it was. I thought I was ready. Keith told me I was ready. You told me I was ready. As it turned out, I was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, proof is in the pudding. So Keith had told you to that initial step of running 3 miles a couple times a week and keeping your
Mhm.
heart rate. How do you think that played into having instructions like that? Did that help with the momentum of, because I feel like the hardest part sometimes is just getting started.
Yeah, that I think that's part of it, and like having a plan, this is one of the benefits of having a coach, I think too, is having somebody else tell you this is the plan.
And when you have somebody who has the kind of experience that Keith does, both competing and coaching, I mean, it's amazing. And there are a lot of great coaches in the area. But one of the things that helped me with was I realized, and it probably wasn't true at the time, but I thought it was like, hey, if I had to go this slow to keep my heart rate at this point for this long, maybe I need a little different approach. So once I started doing long runs of more than like 5 miles or 5 miles or more, I started doing a run walk um, to try to control the heart rate a little bit. And I thought, you know what, I my body feels really good after doing a long run on a run walk. I'm not trying to catch Kelsey. I'm not going that fast. Kind of changing my mindset from the way I thought about like preparing for and running 5Ks, which I had never negative split in a 5K in a race. I may or may not have it training, but basically my thought on a 5K is go out and, at a pretty good pace and then just hold on for dear life in the last mile. And so that was sort of my approach. And then I was absolutely baked at the end of almost every 5K I've run. And I thought, well, maybe I need to change my approach. And so that's when I started doing the run walk. And I was just doing like 4/10 of a mile run, 1/10 of a mile walk, and repeating that on the long runs. And then, sometimes if I wasn't having a great long run, I would just say, all right, listen, I'm not feeling super strong right now, and I'm doing 7 miles today, and at the 5 mile mark, I might just walk a little bit more and then pick it up and run a little bit more, and maybe I would try to pick up the pace later on, maybe not. I think the breakthrough really came. I had two things that changed. One is thinking about that run walk and really deciding I didn't really care about time, that it was a pass fail. Either I was going to finish or I was going to die, but one of the two was going to happen. Um, and then the other thing was figuring out nutrition, which you helped me a lot with in terms of on-course nutrition. Once I figured what I needed and when I needed it, that was a real game changer for me for the longer runs.
Had you ever utilized during run nutrition before this?
No, because the only other long like I love the Ortega River run, but that's just a 5 miler, and even though you're being slow and running around an hour for that, that was not a big demand for nutrition, over the course of just an hour. Maybe I could a little benefit maybe in the last 10 or 15 minutes, but didn't that really wasn't a factor. I had run a 9K for a canines charity at one point down in Nocatee years ago, and I probably could have used it then. I remember another day where Jamie and I had run two 5Ks back to back, one in the morning and one at like late morning, and probably could have used it there because I felt it. But I'd never really done that. I knew I had done pre-fueling and post refueling, but never during the race. And so, I did a little bit of experimentation, but once I kind of figured out, hey, this is the stuff that worked for me, and I just, for full disclosure here, I used goo at the beginning of the race, and then about 45 minutes in, took another one, and then about an hour and a half in, took a Rocketen, and so no caffeine in that, but some extra amino acid, and that really kind of got me through. And I think, and I think at about the 10 mile mark, I may have taken one more goo, but it thanks to a lot of your advice and talking to other folks that I was able to kind of zero in on when I needed it and when my body was going to start craving it, and it worked out perfectly.
That's awesome. So do you think that did you use this strategy at all? Because honestly, on the same day, I was on the same race course as you, having a little bit of a different experience. You were having a great day.
Yeah.
Do you think that having another bucket of an area to focus on, oh, I need nutrition this much. Do you think that helped your overall strategy, even just mentally?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a leap here in terms of kind of professionally when I do, especially play by play, but any kind of broadcast, I love the preparation part of it. So when I called the Gay River Run on Channel 4 for those years, I would spend months preparing to make sure I had at least a couple of notes and some history on all the elite racers who were in the race, all the top locals who were in there. As you know, I mean, I would call and text and say, "Hey, what are you thinking? How's your training been? What's that stuff is there is some stuff online, but you really want to get kind of the personal information. So, I would do interviews with, Emily Sisson or Jordan Hesse or whoever it might be to try to get some of that background information on it and really prepare. So when I got there day of, I didn't necessarily know when I was going to use all that stuff. Some you can kind of map out, but as the race unfolds, you have to understand what's happening, and so you have that at your disposal. So I love the preparation process, and it certainly kind of gives you a sense of confidence going into anything when you're prepared. Same thing for this race. I felt like I was so well prepared for this. The only thing that was a little bit of a drawback is the night before, I didn't get great sleep. I was a little bit excited. Thanksgiving, kids are home, the tempo in the house is a little bit different. So I didn't get, I probably got about an hour and a half less sleep than I really wanted to. And I like to sleep. So, it wasn't like I wasn't getting any, but I didn't get a full, great night's sleep. But by the time I got there, even though the race and for those who ran the race, either the 5K or the half marathon, they'll know that the start got pushed back by I think about 15 minutes. Got pushed back twice because they had to finish setting the course or moving cars or whatever it was, and so a little anxious, to all right, let's get this thing started. And I kept thinking about all right, control pace early. So I don't know that specifically to answer your question. I don't know that specifically that the nutrition aspect of it was something that was keeping my mind occupied, but it was part of a fuller picture of preparation that I'd never had before. So I felt even more prepared for something that I had never done before. I knew a lot of what I was going to experience was going to be a first time. I thought back to some of my training runs where I remember one of the 10-mile training runs where I was dying at about 8.5 miles. And I just like, boy, if this happens on race day, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to have to really slow it down. It did. Luckily, it didn't happen. And having somebody to run with obviously was great. And we ran next to each other for the whole stretch there. And we kept comparing heart rate numbers, and we were basically the same the whole way. So it really was perfect. And I mean, I doubt I'll ever have another race go as smoothly as this one did.
Talk about being in sync with someone when your heart rate's like the same. That's incredible. And you're exactly right. I feel like with running, you get a couple magical days, but they're definitely not all the time. So this is definitely a experience and a medal to keep somewhere special.
Oh yeah, and just like the weather was perfect. It was like 50 degrees at the start of the race. A lot of shade on the course too. And as I've mentioned before, I am not good at dissipating heat. So once I get hot, I kind of stay hot. And between doing the run walk and the temperature and the shade, I never had a problem with heat at all during the race. I think it only got up to maybe 60 by the time I was finished. You had been done, for an hour or something, hour plus by then. But it was, the last, I think we didn't do a run walk the last mile and a half. We just ran the last, or maybe a little bit less than a mile, I guess it was. And never didn't have a heat problem at all in there. It just, it all came together so well. And that helped me, like the memory of that and kind of just the warm glow of that just lasted for days and days and days after the race.
That's why I wanted to talk to you on Thursday when you had a whole week to reflect, just so that, you would remember a lot of the good parts of it. But if you did have painful parts in the race, you would forget and you would tell me that you've already signed up for another race. So
Well, I haven't yet, and so you and Keith and Mark Burgett and several others are like, well, what's next, Cole? I'm like, let me just enjoy this one. It's like, but I think probably the next one I may slip in a 5K here or there, but I'll do the Ortega River Run, which is a 5-miler, and then I will probably the next one after that will probably be the Gate because I've always been broadcasting it or reporting on it and haven't had a chance to run it before, so. That'll probably, those will probably be the next two races of any length that I'll do.
I was about to say, I feel like the Gate River Run this upcoming year sounds like the perfect thing to experience it firsthand. Although my feelings will be hurt when no one's texting me asking me about what my plans are.
I'll still text you. I will still do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
You might have some other things that are going on between now and then too. So
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we got ahead of ourselves. I want to know a little bit more about your training. What do you think the hardest thing about your training was, or if you had to tell someone that had never done a half marathon before, what the hardest part is, what would you say?
um, uh, getting long runs in during the summer, that was for sure because um, and I am not a natural early bird. Okay, I am naturally a night owl. And most of the jobs I've had have had some component of that, calling games that start at 7 in the night or doing the, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock news or whatever it may be. So my body clock sort of has naturally been reinforced by that. And so I probably should have woken up at 5 o'clock and gone out for a run, but I never did in the summertime. So I wanted to make sure I was up and could take my daughter to school and then kind of get the day started. So for doing a 3 or 4 mile run during the week wasn't an issue, but doing those long runs as they got a little bit longer, and I'm thinking anything over 5 miles really. Um, there were times where I would go out and do that at 7:45 or 8 o'clock at night as the sun was setting in the summertime. We're starting to and thinking, all right, well, it's sort of dusk. I can go out and run, and it'll be a little cooler. But the pavement and the asphalt didn't help. So those hot runs were probably the toughest. That and then for some reason, I thought it'd be a great idea to use the SUP as part of a training run one time, one of the long runs, which the shared use pathway over the Fuller Warren Bridge. And so going over it, not too bad, and then ran through San Marco and kind of down toward Miramar, and then came back. And I think this was an either 8 or 9 mile run. I came back and going up the from the South Bank toward Riverside. I feel like that's a longer incline on that side than it is on the other side. I'm not sure if that's accurate enough. It sure felt that way. That was tough too. So those two kind of specific instances, and just trying to figure out, okay, how do I work my life around these long runs? Because on the weekends, um, kids have things going on, and want to spend time with them and the whole bit. And friends may want to hang out. I don't. I maybe have 3 or 4 times in the course of this where I've been hanging out with friends, and sometimes that was running with them. So that's about you do have to give up, as a lot of your own time to do what you're doing. So even I think one time, I think it was sort of a late in the process, I saw you running toward me and I was going the other way. And I was like, all right, well, that's almost like hanging out with a friend for a split second as Kelsey goes by a lot faster than I was going the other way.
My thoughts were, man, now Cole knows that I sometimes sleep in and run at 8 a.m. Or whatever time it was when
Yeah,
I saw you.
it was after I had dropped off my daughter, so I knew it was a little bit later. Which, by the way, listen, it's great because I see you and Lydia McCrae and several others running sometimes as I'm driving my daughter to school at 7:45, 7:50. I'm thinking, wow, they're probably just at the end of some long run. So it was nice to know. I don't know how long you ran that day, but it's nice to know that at least you were running at the same time I was, so I didn't feel like a total fraud.
Lydia and I ran a little bit later this morning. Normally, by the time we both get to the end of the week, we're ready for a late start. So you might catch us out there when you get going again. Speaking of Miss Addie, did she get to see, was she at the race or too cold for her to be out there?
Too cold and early, and Jamie had to take on uh, not she usually does the casseroles and sides, and I cook the turkey on Thanksgiving, so she had to do it all. Plus we had friends coming over, so didn't get that, but I did show her a lot of the photos, and she why do you make that face? I was in a little bit of pain right there. That's what's happening. Or I was happy because I was about to finish. So yeah, she didn't get to see me cross the finish line, but she saw the pictures of me crossing the finish line.
That's awesome. I always thought it'd be cool if my parents would run a race. So I'm sure that as she gets a little bit older, you'll be able to share more and more with her.
Yeah, and we were able to do a 5K with her where Jamie carried her about three-quarters of the way, but she did get to run across the finish line. So she knows the feeling of going across the finish line, have everybody cheer for you. So she set a PR in the Yoda category of being carried half of the way as a 4-year-old.
You have to create so many opportunities to get PRs, because then she'll have being carried across the finish line. She'll have carrying herself across the finish line. So it'll keep the success going, which will make it more fun.
We have a long way to go to catch the stroller PR, which was when she was just a few months old. We did a New Year's 5K with her in the stroller, and I just couldn't catch up to her the whole time.
I mean, she's a little big for a stroller now, right? All of
Oh
my
yeah,
friends that have 4-year-olds, at that point, they're always like, oh, they're too big now.
yeah. She'll sit in one, but she doesn't stay in it very long. She's also she's very opinionated, and she wants to do her thing. So, which means she'll probably be a very good distance runner at
I
some
was about
point
to say
because
the same. I'm
she'll be
like, sounds
stubborn.
like she'll be fast.
Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, so what does Keith have you doing now? Does he have you rest? How are you feeling, by the way? Are you sore? Like, what's happening?
No. So the next day after the race, I took my brother-in-law back to Georgia, drove him up, kind of met halfway with his family. He had spent Thanksgiving with us, so I was in the car for about 5 hours there and back, which probably wasn't the best recovery, but at least I was off my feet. Um, but I felt very good. A little bit of stretching the next day, and a lot of relaxation over the weekend after Thanksgiving. Didn't really do much. I went out on Wednesday, the following Wednesday, for my first kind of post race run, and just did you know I did 3.1 miles, kind of easy run, with not much pace, and still using that same 4/10, 1/10 breakdown, and negative split that, and again, it wasn't fast, but just kind of get moving again. And I think once I settle on for sure what the next race is, which again it'll probably be the Ortega River Run,
Yeah.
I'll have Keith give me some ideas on that, and I actually will have a time goal for that because I've run that race quite a few times, and I'd like to PR that race. But uh, yeah, my recovery was excellent. I mean,
That's awesome.
I can't say how. Almost everything was perfect. I mean, it was just so great. And I told myself I didn't care about my pace,
Mhm.
but did have a number in the back of my head, like, and again, I went under that number. So
Awesome.
it just like it was all fantastic, and I think the lesson learned there is, um, if you're going to enjoy the race, you can either enjoy the race or try to kill it,
Yeah.
and you can still enjoy the race and push yourself at the same time and not be so worried about what the clock says. You are in a different position most of the time than I am as far as that's concerned. I'm not expecting to podium or get my Olympic qualifying or my Boston qualifying or anything else. So it's again, it was a change in approach, because even if I wasn't going to podium in a 5K before, I would go out there and run like I was trying to, I have a feeling that running this way might produce similar results with less, with a quicker recovery than I was doing before.
That's probably more relatable than what you think. I think that so many runners are guilty of chasing times. And every day we wake up, it feels, your body feels different. You don't get that extra hour and a half of sleep. It's 35 degrees in Jacksonville, and then the next day it's 70 degrees.
Mhm.
So many different things can happen, and there's so many non-controllables, which is what made your race so special, that everything was perfect. But I think some of the most successful runners really do what you did, which is enjoy different steps of the process that weren't necessarily time related. Lydia and I were talking this morning how Jerry gave her a new challenge of a new challenge that had nothing to do with time. And that was his advice to her, to have a new challenge that wasn't time related.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think runners at every level, you can't just chase times. You have to enjoy the process and find other parts about the process that that are going to keep you consistent with the training, because there's just going to be times, even if you are trying to Boston qualify, podium, Olympic trials qualify, make the Olympic team, whatever, that it just doesn't always come together, although you're working very hard.
Yeah, and I really, I mean, I felt like for sure that what I got, the biggest benefit I got was from those early runs where I was just controlling the heart rate, and then the long runs after that. I
Yeah.
felt like the week, 3 or 4 miles on, say, Tuesday and Thursday, uh, that I wasn't necessarily improving in that. I was just sort of maintaining the improvement that I had made the week before, the weekend before from the long run. And as I stepped up those long runs, I kind of felt like it was just okay. I wonder, could I go out there? I mean, again, it's a half marathon, it's not a marathon, but I'm looking at some weeks, at 12 or 15 mile weeks. These are not heavy mile weeks. Again, I'm a mid pack at best runner. But the fact that I was stepping up in this distance, I really felt like the benefit I was getting, and also being 50 years old, and on a lot of these runs, I'm just sitting there thinking, gosh, I hope I don't take a wrong step and get an injury. And so if you're only running 12 or 15 or 16 or 20 miles, a week, and it's easier. It felt like to me it was easier to stay healthy as I was progressing toward those longer runs.
Yeah, exactly. My coach told me the other day, he was like, if I could freeze you right now and we could promise you on February 3rd you wouldn't be hurt, you got no more fit, he was like, I would choose that. Kind of just reiterating, nobody's fast or doing well in races if they're hurt. And
Yeah.
so, with running, it can be high stakes with, it's so many things can happen as far as injuries go. So I think that's really smart. Awesome. Well, was there any part about the race that you wanted to specifically share about?
I will say a couple of things that really struck me. One is, boy, there's some beautiful homes there on that pathway, and especially you get some with some big yards, and there were a lot of fires. That it was because it was Thanksgiving morning. People were either cooking a turkey outside, or maybe just had a campfire going while they were, getting ready to have folks come over, whatever it was. It smelled so good along there. I love the smell of hardwoods burning, and the only thing better than that is if you have like pig fat rendering over the top of that. But it smelled so great that like all the senses kind of got a little work there. And the other thing I wanted to mention was along the course, and this happens in a lot of races, but I encountered more of them because there were more water stations that I hit. So many high school runners, from Bartram Trail and Mandarin and Bishop Kenny, and I think I saw Stanton and Wolfson, and so many schools that were there representing. It was great to see that those high school kids were willing to give their time up on a Thanksgiving morning. I think they're all cross country and track kids anyway, and they certainly could have been running in this race, but instead decided they were going to be out there and volunteer and help out those of us who were making our way around whether it was the 5K or the half marathon. So it kind of reinforces what I've talked about a lot about the great community we have, the running community we have in our city and around town. Great to see those high school kids were out there helping us out.
Yeah, definitely. Cole, just how you were saying, I'm laughing. Just how you were saying that you research all the Gate River runners. I did my research on Culpeper before we hopped on here. I read your bio, and on your Facebook bio, it does say you're a fan of smoked meats. And I
Yes.
kind of was like, well, there's no way to incorporate this into this interview. But lo and behold, we talked about meat smoking.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, as a guy who has had a line of barbecue sauces, grew up in Kansas City, ran a barbecue contest for 8 years in town. That's I have incorporated some barbecue into my training. I don't know if that is sports dietitian approved, but sometimes you just got to have some ribs.
All I hear is electrolytes and protein.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Awesome. I couldn't agree more with the community aspect of it. It's my favorite race of the year, just because, well, you get to see all your friends and then you go home and you eat. So what else is there really?
Exactly. And I always am a fan of all the Garmin data that you get from a run or from a race. My favorite bit of data from this run was that I burned over 2,000 calories, which meant I could eat everything. And as it turned out, I did.
You did. What was your favorite thing that you ate?
Oh boy, the broccoli casserole was pretty good. Although the sweet potato casserole probably was the highlight this year. And then I always love a pumpkin pie.
Oh, me too. I didn't have pumpkin pie. Our Thanksgiving was condensed this year, so I did not have pumpkin pie, but I would agree. It sounds like you do like the proteins, but I love any of the carbs.
On Thanksgiving, I like anything that I can fit on my plate.
Amazing. Okay, well, I look forward to Cole. Thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
I look forward to seeing what you hop into next. And yeah, I'm so happy that you had a good experience with this, and it's going to give you momentum as you start to sign up for more races. No pressure. But I'm glad that your friend peer pressured you.
Yeah, I'm easily peer pressured, I think, as it turns out. So and it's nice to have that little nudge when it comes to running. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, you're so welcome. I enjoyed it as always. Always fun.
Right, that'll do it for 2023 as we look forward to 2024. January is going to be a very busy month in the Jacksonville Grand Prix scene. Some great races coming up. And then in February, you've got the Donna, you've got the Ortega River Run, one of my favorites every year. And then in March, of course, the Gate River Run. More details on that coming up. So thank you so much for being a part of our community here in Jacksonville, for being a part of the Running for Coverage community. Please share this with all your running friends. We want to continue to grow the podcast and the newsletter, and just let everybody find a great space of support for those who run in Jacksonville. For Kelsey Pontius, I'm Cole Pepper. Thanks so much for watching and listening to Running for Coverage.